Hello, my name is Tam France and I'm new watching a video on my phone that I've never seen before. It is called Living on $38,000 a Year in Charlotte, NC, Millennial Money. I'm going to watch now. Be sure to smash that like button.
I want to have my own coffee shop. I want to wake up one day and walk down the street and be able to open my own store. I'm Chloe Potter. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I make about $38,000 a year.
She runs a business out of her apartment. I used to do that too.
You work really hard and you make money. Having your own business, you have to be careful.
Chloe used to run her business, or runs her business out of her apartment. I did that for like the first 2.5 years of my business. I shipped from my apartment. I did all of my office work from my apartment. I pretended I had 3 employees, so I had 3 different emails just so I seemed a little more legit. I did all of that through my apartment.
So to be so meticulous and count down to the penny, to me, is just like too much anxiety. Cutting back on expenses such as like going out down the street to get drinks, I mean, it's not a question.
She spent $600 on food, which seems fair, but my gosh, that's way more than I used to spend. I used to be able to live off like $300 a month. That seems like a lot. I couldn't afford to go out for dinner. I don't know if she's going out for dinner, and I definitely couldn't afford to go out for coffee with people. I know she's making her own coffee, so she's saving money there, but still I wouldn't spend the extra money on going out. I would live on Indian food. $5 can last you at least 3 or 4 days for Indian food. So yeah, that's how I kept my budget so low. However, I'm also British, and as a student, I used to live on something called beans on toast. Like Heinz beans, other brands exist, so feel free to go for those, but beans on toast, wonderful.
I'm from Boca Raton, Florida originally. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina about 1.5 years ago. Charlotte's someplace where I found like I could make it work. I didn't feel like I could make it work in New York, where like cost of living is super high.
Okay, 2 things. I think she made a really smart decision not starting a business in New York. I had originally started my business in London, and I realized my mistakes within a heartbeat, but I couldn't avoid it. That's where I lived. And then I moved to Utah to relocate my business, which is why I'm in Utah now, because the cost of operating my business out of Utah was so much cheaper than out of a major city. Smart, smart, smart.
My partner and I, Xavier, we met in CrossFit. Health is super important to us, so we spend $100 each per month on a weightlifting functional fitness membership.
To many, I'm sure you'd think, why are they spending that much money on working out? $100 does seem like a luxury a month. However, I really do value exercise. I think it's wise to keep your heart as healthy as possible. And when I was a business owner, there was so much stress every moment of every day. Going to the gym for just that hour and getting on the bike or the treadmill or whatever, it was just a great distraction. So in my opinion, it's great for your mental health.
My partner and I are vegan. We do like to spend a little bit extra money on buying organic foods that are healthy to fuel the busy lives that we have.
I don't know how much you want me to critique, but I've got constant notes. Being vegan is very it's expensive, as they've mentioned that it is quite costly. However, I know that there are vegan options that are much cheaper. As I said, Indian food, a lot of Indian food is vegan. I think that if they are spending a lot of money on their dietary choices, I think that they could probably find ways to reduce that by just YouTubing or Googling recipes that are much less costly. I am not a vegan, but I lived on a very vegan-ish diet because I couldn't afford anything else. I
ended up getting into coffee because of my love for traveling, and then I would As I traveled, go to like the local spots and visit them. I feel like that's where a lot of culture is. That's how I've made friends, from coffee. I started Levitate Coffee Roasters in June of 2018. I went online before ever starting it, and I was like, how to start my own coffee company. And they were like, you need $25,000 to start your own company. I was like, well, I don't have $25,000, but I'm gonna start small, super small.
Chloe started a business that she didn't really know too much about. I think that's really risky, and great if you can do it, great. I wasn't that big of a risk taker. I found that having knowledge of my industry beforehand and working every job I could within that industry helped me build a business that was successful. I do find it interesting that she was told that it would cost $25,000 minimum to start her business. I was told it would cost at least $100,000 to start my business. I started my business on $4,000.
The expenses that come with having your own coffee business, initially, I put it on my credit card.
Oh. I understand that Chloe had to use a credit card to build her business initially. I think relying on a credit card to expense your business is very, very, very risky. You can't guarantee your income, and therefore you don't know if you're going to be able to pay your credit card off in time. I was raised in a very active Muslim household, which means we're not allowed finance, which means we weren't allowed credit cards or overdrafts. If you didn't have the money, you couldn't buy the thing. And so for my business completely and throughout the life of my business, I wasn't able to ever use a credit card. And I think it built a really strong business because it meant that every penny the business owned was mine. I do find it risky when people run their business by a credit card or a lot of credit.
I'm not profiting from my business yet, and I don't expect to profit from my business until at least 3 to 4 years in. I feel like the first few years when you're opening your business, you're experimenting, you're figuring out what works and what doesn't work. It's worth it when it's something that it's not work.
Love that Chloe's not taking a profit from her business yet. She said that it might take a few years. It does, or it should, if you haven't had major investment in your business. If it's something you're self-funding, in my opinion, you shouldn't be paying yourself for quite some time. I waited 3 years to start paying myself. I had a job on the side that paid for my cost of living, but as far as my business was concerned, every penny that I earned went back in the business to build a business. And that's, I think, in my opinion, how you build a sustainable business.
You don't have to answer to anybody else. It's your company, and it's not about the money at that point.
This one point she's mentioned I love, because she said you don't have to answer to anybody else. That is the main reason I started my business. I do not take instruction, orders, commands, any of that well from anybody. Don't ever tell me what to do. No thanks. I started my own business because I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to make the decisions, and because I was sick of idiots telling me how to run a business when they were doing a terrible job of running their own.
I'm 26 years old and I don't have insurance. Because I am working for a startup company, there aren't enough people to kind of get on the insurance bandwagon, so they don't offer it yet, but we are looking into it, I know, as a company. I can't afford health insurance with a growing small business.
This is the only part I'm really not loving. Health insurance, I think, is so important, and I know it's so costly. I had the luxury of being in England when I first started my business, and the majority of my life, and we don't have such a thing as health insurance. But then when I started my business and I was living in America, one of the first things I did was got health insurance for myself. It was the basic bare minimum. Even that is, I know, incredibly expensive, but God forbid something should happen that could bankrupt her if she has to pay for that.
$200 a month for moderate insurance is just not affordable. Having an emergency fund would be great. Things do just pop up. You know, you have medical bills, or you have dentist appointments, or car maintenance. I think that having a savings and a retirement isn't as easy as it used to be. I'm hoping that eventually my small business can make money so that I can have some savings and so that I can have some retirement. I'm about $7,000 in credit card debt.
This was the thing I was concerned about with her building her business on credit. She's now $7,000 in debt, and that's got to be keeping her up at night. When you are a small business owner, you are constantly worried about your business, and there's so much that you're thinking about. The last thing I would want on top of all that is to be worried every night that I had so much debt hanging over me.
Every month I put like $400 towards it, since my minimum is about half that. But I don't have any student loan debt. A lot of my friends have like $30,000 or $40,000 of student loan debt that they're paying off. I don't have that, thankfully.
Just because somebody else has $40,000 of debt, $100,000 of debt, $1 million worth of debt, doesn't mean that that negates your $7,000 worth of debt, especially if it's causing you anxiety and is making you focus on that as opposed to focus on your business. So yes, I know that your debt might be smaller than your friends or your neighbors. Debt's debt. We need to find a way to get out of that as soon as possible.
Having debt isn't where all my energy goes. I'm sure like it's stressful at times, and I definitely have my days where I'm freaking out, but you can't focus on that all of the time. Just focusing on being an autonomous person and having my own business as my focus, and being able to eventually help out my family. You know, right now I get some help from them, and eventually I'd like to be in a space where I am able to help those around me that have helped me out.
I love that that's her goal. I love that she wants to be able to help the people that have helped her. I love that she wants to help her family. That was one of my major motivators when I had my businesses, and thankfully when my businesses really started to take off, I was able to help my family and friends. But to get to that point, it required so much sacrifice, and I do believe that Chloe is clearly sacrificing a lot. It looks like she's doing incredible work. It looks like the business is actually successful, which is wonderful. Not many new businesses can say that. However, I think there are a few tweaks she can make to really get her to the place she wants to be. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe to CNBC's Make It, and be sure to watch Boost My Business on Facebook Watch. Thanks. Bye.